This is dedicated to my good friend and comrade, my wife.
Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. This story begins with rain.
I remember standing out on the porch looking around and talking to her on the phone. She had called me and I was like, "Did you look outside? I've never seen anything like this, Kate." I said, "It's really raining quite hard." Very shortly after that, I got a call back and she said, "There's water coming in down the stairs." And she said, "I'm going to go down and start getting stuff out of the basement." I said, "Well, be very careful." I started running home and Kate called me and she said, "I need you to hurry. Something has fallen in front of the door of the studio and I can't get out." And I said, "Okay, I'll be right there." And I started running and I was banging on the windows of cars asking people to help me. And people were ignoring me completely. And I then realized that I could probably run faster than these cars were moving. But it was just a torrent of water everywhere. I was running. I could just see the waters were like, it was like causing fins up onto the sidewalk of water. And I was just hauling in my dress clothes down the hill. And she called me one more time and says, "Where are you? It's really starting to fill up." And I said, "I'm 4 houses away." And I'm screaming at this point, and I'm running faster than I've ever run in my life. And I get to the house and I can't fathom what's happening because there's water everywhere that I can possibly see. And I open the front door and I hear her in the basement, but I also hear this powerful water running. And I hear her saying, "Okay, stay calm. I need you to stay calm." And I got into the basement and the water was to my waist and I could hear her through the door at this point now starting to talk to 911. And she's telling me to be calm and she's on the phone with 911 operator. And I can hear her again and again repeating the address and the person not quite getting it. And I'm screaming like crazy trying to figure out how to get her out, and I start removing the pins on the doors and I'm able to remove 2, and then I reach underwater and can't get the 3rd one. And pretty soon the water's over my head and I'm completely underwater. So I have to push things out of the way and swim out, and I realize that she's now probably underwater also. So I run upstairs and her studio was just below our bedroom, and I knew there was a heater vent that connected somehow to the heater, and I started stomping on it trying to get it broken open, so maybe if I can find her, reach in, I could at least pull her head up. And then the firefighters came.
Firefighters say the woman became trapped in the basement of her home in Seattle's Madison Valley neighborhood.
It was a perfect storm, say engineers. An extremely unusual chain of unfortunate
Floodwaters
events.
tore through her foundation wall and trapped
Floodwater
Kate.
started pouring down the stairs.
Water rushing into the home of
trapping her inside the studio where she recorded audiobooks
But
for a
rising
living.
water made it impossible to open the doors. Firefighters arrived moments later. Even they could not open that basement door. Instead, they fired up a chainsaw on the main floor.
Cut a hole in the floor to access the small utility room, and fished with a pike pole, actually entered the water and were able to locate the victim.
I don't know what happened that night. I just know that it was a horror story of just anything that you can never imagine. And the firefighters had to use a chainsaw to cut her out of the basement. They basically cut a hole in our bedroom floor.
There was a lot of smoke, there was a lot of confusion, and there's so many people inside this room that you really couldn't tell what was going on. They were actually pulling her out of the water and putting her on the floor here in the kitchen. They began resuscitating her at that point. So as soon as they got Kate revived, they loaded her into the ambulance. They'd gotten her pulse back.
And I asked if I could go in the ambulance, and they said no. And so my brother drove me with my mother, and we followed the ambulance to Harborview. And that's where I went running through the hospital trying to find the emergency room. And when I got to the emergency room, there was a woman standing there, and she said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Kate's partner." And she said, "Well, we have to get someone on the phone who's next of kin." And I was infuriated at this point. I was freaking out because who was this person to tell me I couldn't be with Kate after what I had just gone through?
We see so many traumas in the Harborview emergency department. And not just traumas, really bad kind of medical problems, people who come in with heart attacks, for example. So, I mean, I play this scenario over and over so many times when I go to work. A husband comes in, he's having a heart attack. He can't speak to us because he's intubated. And a woman strolls in next to him and says, "I'm his wife, and this is what he would want." And we take that at face value and we trust that. And I've never once asked, a heterosexual person to hand me their marriage license or do any of that. So it's an interesting thing, I think, that this social worker wanted proof that they were actually partners, because we never do that to our heterosexual patients.
They had to get a member of her family, and what if they'd have just gotten a brother-in-law or something like that? Would that have been okay? It just, and I don't want to emotionally charge this or anything, but it just seemed like, it was, we're sorry, but you're gay, so unfortunately you can't make these decisions. And that's just, to me, that's what I walked away with it. It was that you can't make these decisions. I don't care if you lived with her for 8 years, you're gay, so how can you possibly make these decisions? A heterosexual family member has to make this decision. I mean, that's just what it felt like to me, and it just,
I think any way you play it and any way you talk about this, that's really the definition of discrimination, right? You treat one group of people differently than you treat another. You ask one group of people to jump through hoops and you don't ask another. I mean, that is the purest form of discrimination.
I had to call information. I had to get Kate's sister on the phone. I couldn't find Kate's mom.
I want to believe that most healthcare workers aren't actively discriminating. In the emergency room setting, equality may not exist for same-sex couples simply out of ignorance. And what I mean, as an example, a fellow may come in with a fellow, and it's assumed it's a friend and not next of kin. And it's most of the time, I would guess, inadvertent. It's not on people's radar that this male patient has a husband or has a boyfriend versus a friend that may be asked to leave instead of being actively involved in his medical care.
And her sister said, "Yes, absolutely, Charlene can be back there." They had then said to me that they were able to stabilize Kate and that they were moving her to intensive care. And I thought, well, this is a miracle, they've got her stabilized enough and she's going to live. And now we're just kind of settling in for perhaps maybe a coma or her body having to, respond. And about 30 minutes later, I was allowed to be in with her in ICU. And I wasn't in the room more than 2 minutes and she coded. And they started doing CPR and compressions and working on her frantically. And then the doctor came up to me and said, "We have to make a decision."
Working at Harborview and then working at the VA is another good example, where a lot of our patients are homeless. A lot of our patients are estranged from their families. And we get them in the ICU, for example, where they're terribly sick. They're intubated. They cannot speak to us. We have no idea what their wishes are. And, as doctors, we're kind of faced with this decision where we truly want to do what they would want us to, but have no idea. So we start with social workers, and they're really the ones who do the legwork, trying to find, who does this person have? You know, oh, they have this sister who lives 3,000 miles away that they haven't talked to in 2 years. Oh, maybe there's a friend. Oh, there's a neighbor that checks in on them. And we start this process that a lot of times seems really ridiculous, where we're trying to find somebody, anybody, who knows something to guide our decisions so that we're making good ones for this patient. And we struggle with this. And then there's this situation where here's this woman who comes in who says, I love this woman. I have spent the last 10 years of my life with her. I know exactly what she wants. We've had this discussion. And for us to say that's not good enough, I don't know. I mean, you have to, your mind has to go to that. There's this discrimination, that we think differently about homosexual relationships, that we value them less.
We decided that we would try for 20 more minutes and then let her go. And I asked, are you sure this is the right thing to do? And she said yes. So I had to tell them to stop.
I can't imagine the pain that Charlene went through that night. And I'm sure she did not want to make what I am positive was the hardest decision of her whole entire life.
And I asked them if they could take the intubation tube out, and they said they couldn't. And I just wanted to kiss her, and I wanted to tell her goodbye. And so we put oil on her head and her hands and her feet, and we said the Our Father and the Hail Mary for her, and we prayed for her. And then they let me be alone with her. She was the love of my life. She was the joy. She could walk in the room and she was a light. How do you say goodbye to that after what you've gone through, you know? And we got to the funeral home, and we were brought into a room by this man, and we sat down. And I looked at him and I said, "Excuse me, sir." I said, "You might want to direct all of your questions towards me. I'm Kate's partner. I'll be making all the arrangements." And he said, "Well, you really don't have any rights." And I left the room, and I remember my mom coming out to get me to come back in. And I said, "Mom, I can't do this." I said, "This is ridiculous." I said, "This is the second time now that I've been told I'm no one." And my mom says, "Go back in there for the sake of Kate, and we will make sure that this never happens again."
I see. I'm not a very good artist, so I thought I would record you my birthday wish for you here on your 40th birthday. I've written you a poem. It's called A Birthday Poem for Charlene in Her 40th Year. There is a moment every day. Sometimes the moment can last for hours. I am beside you, and I am all of myself, and you are all of yourself, and we are in our world, the world we've made, the one our love has made. It's very warm in our world. It's quiet. It's usually sunny, or sometimes there are dramatic blowing clouds. Or it's peaceful night. There's almost always someone else with us there who's furry. Our world is sometimes crowded, actually. What a refuge. What a wonderful place for us both to know is there. How nice to be there every day, even if it's just a minute. I get frantic. I wish I could calm down, relax, stop being so scared of not being enough, of slowing the pace, of losing out. I worry about stuff. But then it happens. In the morning beside you, watching the game, in the hammock, driving to the store, eating crackers and cheese and drinking beer, walking the pooch. It always happens every day, and I can say, ah, let go for a minute, be in our world. That is your gift to me. Nobody else made that with me. And what's wonderful is knowing that everything could change. Things could go all topsy-turvy in an instant, but that won't ever change. There will always be that moment. Sometimes a minute long, sometimes all day. Our big moments of happiness, no matter what. So happy birthday, Cease. I'm proud of you. You're strong and beautiful and gifted and righteous and honorable and gentle and the sweetest thing I ever saw. God bless you, honey.
In January, I spoke to our friend Joe McDermott. He asked me to come to Olympia to testify.
Before you is Senate Bill 5336, entitled An Act Relating to Protecting Individuals' Domestic Partnerships by Granting Certain Rights and Benefits.
For the record, my name is Ed Murray. I'm a state senator from the 43rd District, which is in Seattle. To my right is my partner, Michael Shiozaki, who is a voter in the 43rd District. I want to thank the chair and the committee for the opportunity to speak to this Senate bill, which provides certain domestic partnership benefits for lesbian and gay families.
We're considering a bill today that is designed primarily for same-sex couples. We are considering a bill that's part of a continuum that started over 30 years ago, if you all recall, when the homosexual community wanted to just come out of the closet so they could live their life in the open, and they do.
One day, nature will take its course, and one of us will be seriously ill and hospitalized. This legislation would protect us in our right to visit each other.
Since that time, the agenda of the homosexual community has advanced. So homosexuality is taught as normal in our schools. Homosexual couples have special benefits in certain areas of our culture, and the agenda is continuing. My prediction is this is not the end of the advancement of the homosexual movement.
Michael and I wish that after 15 years together that we were here this afternoon to ask you to allow us to marry. But until that discussion of marriage occurs in the not too distant future, we, like thousands of lesbian and gay families across this state, need protection now.
We are men and women have children, and our children have children which cause grandchildren, and I have some. This is not a good bill for the people of the state of Washington, and I encourage you to think very carefully, where are we headed? Where are we headed? If you pass this bill, what is their next item to be considered for the further advancement of their agenda? Thank you for the chance to testify.
Please, if we could have the panel for the bill come up, Charlene Strong, Beth Reed, Barbara Steele, and Lynn Grotsky.
Hello, my name is Charlene Strong, and I brought a picture along of my partner, Kate Fleming, today. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I live in Seattle. I lived in Seattle with my partner, Kate Fleming. I am an interior designer. I manage a dental practice. My partner was an audiobook narrator and producer of Cedar House Audio. On December 14th, Kate Fleming died in our basement in a flood. After attempts by myself to retrieve Kate from her audiobook studio in our basement and almost drowning myself, I then followed the ambulance to Harborview Medical Center. When I arrived at Harborview Medical Center, I was denied access to Catherine to be by her side as she lay dying. A family member had to be called in Alexandria, Virginia, to allow me to be in that room with her. As the minutes ticked by, I kept wondering, what if she dies without me holding her hand? What if she dies without knowing that I told her I loved her or took off her wedding ring? After I was allowed access, I was treated like any other married person by the medical staff at Harborview, and for that I will always be grateful. I was able to tell Kate how beautiful she was and how dearly I loved her as she lay dying. I was able to take her wedding ring off and tell her that I would take good care of it. And then it became the time to make my funeral arrangements for my partner. When I got there, the funeral director did not even shake my hand. He didn't offer me any condolences. He looked directly at Mrs. Fleming, Kate's mother, and directed all of his questions. When I asked him to direct his questions to me that I would be making all funeral arrangements, he wouldn't even look at me. He slid the cremation request over to Mrs. Fleming. After suffering one of the greatest losses of my life and the love of my life, of one of the most beautiful people that I ever had the chance to be with for 10 years, I suffered the indignities of not being able to make those decisions. This bill is exactly what I experienced in real life a month and a half ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please.
Charlene put a human face on the reality of gay and lesbian families. What she did, considering her own personal loss and her own personal pain, it was a significant act of courage. And quite honestly, I'm not sure the bill would have been as successful as it was if we hadn't had her testimony.
We didn't have a sense of what the stories were that would come out of the woodwork in support of the legislation. I think Charlene Strong is a great example of that.
To have Charlene come down and tell that story to the legislature, both in the House and the Senate, I think was very impactful. Really put a face on what we were facing and how our relationships, our families aren't recognized in some very basic situations.
She was willing to make just an incredible personal sacrifice at a time of great personal pain.
We put together the initial package of protections about hospital visitation, about inheritance rights, about funeral arrangements back in November of last year. And at that time, of course, Charlene and Kate were living happily and making plans for a Christmas where they were going to be giving each other estate planning documents. We had no idea that not having that legislation already in place would have such a big effect on them.
Substitute Senate Bill 5336, final passage. Remarks. Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope you have fallen in love. I hope you've had that experience.
I know that being one of 2 and now one of 5 gay legislators still continues to be a constant opportunity to educate our colleagues on both sides of the aisle about what it's like to be in a same-sex relationship and how normal our everyday lives are.
Therefore, today we advance a domestic partnership registry that provides some immediate protection for these couples who are currently barred from marriage. Across the state, even in progressive places, real people, couples, citizens suffer today because of this.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, let me point out a couple of things. First of all, this is a precursor to same-sex marriage.
Heterosexual marriage is in trouble, people. Mr. Speaker, it's in trouble in our country.
I stand in opposition today of this bill. Whatever happens today, marriage is still between one man and one woman. Marriage is still the cornerstone of our society. The foundation that God has given us, the laws of nature, and nature is God.
Mr. Speaker, I'm always going to think of this bill in connection with our constituent, Charlene Strong, who lost her partner in a terrible flood, who followed her to the hospital only to be denied access to her bedside until she could contact a blood relative to give consent, who followed her partner's body to the funeral home only to be denied the ability to make funeral arrangements until the deceased woman's mother consented. I ask you, Mr. Speaker, to make a start at addressing these injustices that our families face and to support this bill. Thank you.
Republicans are going to focus on things that matter most to the people of Washington: education, health care.
Representative Ahern, please comment on the bill at hand.
Okay, anyway, I just want to point out the difference between the two parties right here.
Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's difficult to talk on these issues that are so intensely personal. Freedom from fear is the issue that's before us with this bill. And I'm fearful, Mr. Speaker, and so are thousands of gay and lesbian families in the state of Washington. This bill addresses those fears and others, not for the dead and the past, but for the living, for the future, and for the present.
Substitute Senate Bill 5336, the Secretary will read.
Many Washingtonians are in intimate, committed, and exclusive relationships with another person to whom they are not legally married. These relationships are important to the individuals involved and their families.
Every time you put a face to who gay and lesbian people are, in the reality of our lives, in the reality of our families, you win votes.
Senator Murray.
Thank you, Mr. President. From time to time, an issue comes before this body that is both political and intensely personal. For tens of thousands of lesbian and gay families throughout the state of Washington, this is one of those issues.
Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have watched this incremental movement as it has slowly eroded the sanctity of marriage. We tried to amend it. We tried to add the amendment that would exempt such societal destroying practices as bestiology, which is sexual intercourse with animals, necrophilia, which is sexual intercourse with the dead, incest, which is sexual intercourse between a parent and a child, and
Senator Murray, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, point of order.
Please state your point of order.
The citizens of this state should not be described with those derogatory terms. She's not speaking to the bill.
Senator Eddy, for what purpose do you rise?
A point of order, Mr. President.
Please state your point of order.
We need to discuss the bill. This is going way off to another direction.
Senator Benton.
Make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, you can call it what you want, but the bill you'll be voting on in a few minutes is absolutely conferring rights that are reserved for married couples on homosexual couples.
Senator Hardrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I will try to stay on the bill as good as I can here. Because if we were in some other countries in the world, we'd probably walk into this chamber with a bomb tied to ourselves and blow a bunch of people up. So thank God we live in America and that we can settle this in a rational fashion where different people that believe different ways can express their views, have the freedom to express their views, have the freedom to hold their views, and then we vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Weinstein.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't believe this bill is about bombs exploding. I don't believe this bill is about dead people having sex with dead people or having sex with animals. What this bill is about is whether or not two people who love each other, who have a committed relationship with each other, can merely file a form with the Secretary of State and have the state recognize that union and give them just some of the rights that married people have.
Senator Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. I would like for you to just look around these chambers at the faces and what it looks like today. It did not look like this 30, 20 years ago. It looks like this now because of the rights, because of what we want America to look like and what we want this chamber to look like. And it deals with rights. I have been married to the same man for 57 years. So you see, I support marriage. I supported DOMA, which is the Defense of Marriage Act. So you see, I support marriage. Benefits for those who have a committed relationship. A committed relationship to each other, who live by the rules, who pay their taxes, who contribute, should not be denied those benefits that we have. It is unfair. It is wrong. This is not what America is about. Standing on the shoulders of my ancestors, and I did not get here alone. I got here by the help of everyone. Red, yellow, blue, white, whatever. I see no color. So to my good friend, your partner, and all who contribute, gays, lesbian, you have earned these benefits. I support you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
The Domestic Partnership Bill passed in the House and the Senate by a vote of nearly 2-1.
This is a very proud moment for me as governor, to make sure that the rights of all of our citizens are equal. Those are the values of the people of the state of Washington. It is only right that we share those values equally with every one of our citizens. Too often, my friends, we have heard stories about couples being denied the basic rights at tragic, absolutely tragic moments in their lives. We have all heard, I think, about the testimony of Charlene Strong. Charlene and I spent some time together this morning and found just how much we have in common. Not just love for another human being, but our faith and our belief that out of a terrible tragedy, sometime comes some good. And that, for Charlene, is what today is all about. The fact of the matter is, she testified. She wanted to ensure that what happened to her would never happen to anyone else. She, of course, lost her loved one in the devastating storm last December. Kate Fleming had been pulled out of the flooding basement in Seattle and taken by ambulance to Harborview Medical Center. However, Charlene was barred from entering Kate's room in the hospital. She was left to seek permission instead from Kate's legal next of kin in order that she be able to simply sit next to Kate during the final moments of her life. And later, the funeral director did not acknowledge Charlene or her loss, and instead directed every part of what he had to do with the mother, Kate's mom. But of course, when it came to payment time, was more than willing to accept Charlene's credit card. This, my friend, should not happen to anybody. God bless you, Charlene, for coming today and making this day possible. Our families are different, but every one of our families deserve our undivided support. Today is a day to give that undivided support. I too want to say a big thanks to all of you here who made this day possible, for all of these legislators standing here and those who can't be with us, for their dedicated leadership to ensuring that every family in the state of Washington will be looked upon with equality, respect, and love. Thank you very much, and with that, my friends, I'll sign the bill.
I get phone calls every day from people across this country, and when I found out about the story of Charlene Strong, and GLAAD found out about the story of Charlene Strong, we immediately knew that this was a compelling story, and the moment we met her, it just confirmed it. We all understand that universal truth of wanting to be with your partner at the most crucial moments, and to see that inequality that she faced and how well she could speak about it and really just look you in the eye and say, what would you do? How would you handle that? I think that, we just saw the potential. GLAAD saw the potential in Charlene to really influence millions of people.
I'm not alone in this issue. Everyone who has ever experienced a tragedy, who has ever loved someone, would understand exactly what I went through that night. It's about everyone. It's about anyone who's ever loved someone.
She's a little, yeah.
Is this at the farm?
At the farm, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so.
Yeah, well, we went to the farm when
Kate?
when I was pregnant with Kate. That was the first time we went to the farm. And that was when I was pregnant with her, and then this was the second year when she was.
Is that the tobacco in the farm?
Yes, that's tobacco in the
She said she used to love go in there and just sniff.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that was. I remember she became a smoker after a while. I remember.
It's your fault.
But they just loved her. She was such a doll, and
Is that her?
That's her in the snow. Mm-hmm. Mo had given her a ride down the hill. And this is Easter. Yeah, that was
basketball.
So, there's a whole lot of. Let's see.
I have that picture.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? She liked all the family stuff. Yeah, that's because it was Paula's first communion, and she was getting her dressed for it. She's so cute. She's such a cutie.
My darling's life was taken by the river time, and I'm waiting on that river to come and take mine, singing, oh Lord, I'm ready now. Please, Lord, come and take me now. In a little cedar house, spent our happiest day. But your hand, it came down, took that all away. So I'm singing, oh Lord, I'm ready now. Please, Lord, come and take me now. must have prepared her, for she was calm and resigned. But I can't understand why I'm not by her side, singing, oh Lord, I'm ready now. Please, Lord, come and take me now. I hear her voice speaking from time to time, and I'm ready to be returned to her side, singing, oh Lord, I'm ready now. Please, Lord, come and take me now. How I wish I knew what is true. And if I took my life, would it get me back to you? Singing, oh Lord, I'm ready now. Please, Lord, come and take me now.
GLAAD is in the business of helping people to become more savvy when they're working with the media. When they go on television, we want them to be able to stay on point, to be able to be confident in what they're doing. And so a media training like this one, like the one that Charlene is taking part in, is really to help her to be able to hone her messages about equality and fairness and be able to deliver those messages in the most articulate way that she can. It's not the easiest thing to just step into the spotlight like that. And so GLAAD gives our members the tools to do that, to be able to tell their stories in the most effective way. We're bringing together people who can change hearts and minds, who can speak to the broader public through the media, tell their stories in a compelling way. And then the mission is to sort of get people to maybe do something different the next time they're in the voting box because they have seen the compelling stories.
You're watching CBS News on Logo. It's every gay couple's worst nightmare. Last year, Kate Fleming was in a coma after being trapped in her basement during a flash flood. To add insult to injury, her partner of 10 years wasn't allowed to be by her side in her final moments. It was then that she decided to fight. What happened next changed laws in her native Washington state.
It was just the indignity of having to spend that time in such a crucial moment.
Soon after the training, Charlene did an interview with CBS on Logo, the national LGBT program on CBS, and she did a phenomenal job. I already thought Charlene was compelling. That's why I invited her to a high-level spokesperson training in the first place, because she already had the raw abilities.
Charlene Strong was particularly effective because she had a powerful story to tell. But anybody in a committed same-sex relationship has a powerful story to tell because they all share that anxiety about what might happen if something goes wrong and they wind up in the hospital.
Rose was a performance artist. A lot of people confuse that with performing arts, which is an entirely different thing. Performance art is actually a visual art that is live action based.
Today I am going to cure my cancer by joining the Tour de France. Lance Armstrong showed us that beating cancer only takes strength and courage, and I know that I've got just as much as anyone. No one should ever be sick. Everyone should be happy and healthy and strong all the time. I'm working toward that goal, and with your help, I can make it. You can help me in my mission by giving me your Live Strong bracelet.
The day prior to her death, she was actually in hospice here at the house and was at this point already unconscious. It was very clear that death was imminent. And she had made prior arrangements, again, having cancer and knowing that someday she was going to die, and had prepaid for a cremation. And so I called the crematorium or the funeral service that she had contracted with the day before she died and just said, who would the remains go to if she were to die today? And they said, well, actually, they wouldn't go to anyone because there's no one specified in our paperwork. We don't ask that question. So I said, okay, well, I have a specific document about that. And they said, oh, this is very common. Just have your attorneys fax it over. And so I contacted the attorneys that did our giant binder of planning and actually had them fax over the disposition of the remains for Rose. And so then the next morning she died. And so I called the same company, and they actually came out and had the folks take her body out of the house. And so it sounded like everything was okay. And then we got towards the end of the phone call, which was fairly civil. I just said, kind of wanting to triple check, I had no fear at this point that anything was wrong, but I said, did you get the document that my attorneys sent over yesterday? Because now I was talking to someone different that actually owns this funeral service. And what followed was an incredibly unpleasant phone call where he told me that he had the document and that he thought it was signed by Rose, but that he didn't want to follow it. And the terminology that he used was, I believe that her remains belong with her mother. And, you know, to my knowledge, her mother had never contacted this funeral home, had never asked for her remains. There was no fight even going on in the background. I mean, I can't imagine, my God, if there had been. But he just felt that I shouldn't have them, that her mother should have them. And I kept saying, but you have the document. It's signed. Our attorneys sent it to you. And he kept saying, no, you don't understand. I have the document. I don't like the wording. I don't believe that the ashes belong with you. And I suddenly realized, my God, here I've paid all of this money. I have all of these things. And then I just sort of looked, I remember actually looking at sort of this whole binder and thinking, is this what every page of this is going to be like? I'm going to have to use it for something. And the individual that I'm trying to now negotiate with is going to say, yeah, I see your legal paperwork, but I just don't believe it. I don't want to do it. And if you had asked me that morning before Rose was dead, or even immediately after her death, were you her next of kin? I would have said, my God, of course. That's what that whole binder's about. We're married in Canada. That's what it means to have a same-sex domestic partner affidavit. That's what it is. I'm her next of kin. Of course I am. Well, it turns out that that's actually not true. Her parents were. Now, she was 31 years old when she died and married. And we were each other's, sole source of support and companionship and all of those things that you think about. And it was just terrifying to realize that her legal next of kin was her parents. And mine was my parents in Florida, in Palm Beach. And I think that that's something that I've realized as I've gone through all of this, that it's an incredibly important concept because you cannot create it. There is no contract that you can sign. It's a blood relationship that, again, is only superseded by heterosexual marriage. And it had a lot of other implications for us. For example, towards the end of her life, one of the things that we thought a lot about was if she'd had to go inpatient, for example, into the hospital. We, of course, had visitation paperwork. But the problem is anyone that counts as her next of kin, so both of her parents and their new spouses, could have also been there, which would have actually been in violation of her wishes and my wishes and the plans that we'd set up. And I hadn't realized that because the next of kin gets to decide when they want to be in the room and who else can be in the room, they couldn't have kicked me out because I had visitation paperwork, but I had absolutely no right to decide who else was in that room or for how long or at what times. It's entirely possible that had we had to go into the hospital, I could never have been alone with her again, for example. And there's no way to change that. There's absolutely nothing that you can do to create that legal relationship.
Reach for the sky. We have been together for 50 years.
That's wonderful.
Plus a few months.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Today we're getting the chance in Washington State to register as domestic partners. So that means we get about 10 rights.
This domestic partnership legislation is the first step in what we hope is a process that will bring us to full equality.
left, glide to the right, keep your baby inside. Open up the back gate, everybody circulate, crack the whip with all your might. Shovel and slip from the hip dip, take a trip, jump to the front, to the back, to the front, and over by the back gate, everybody circulate, crack the whip, and promenade.
In April 2007, Washington became the 6th state to provide domestic partnership rights. 4 other states offer similar rights, but call them civil unions. Only 2 states currently issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples: Massachusetts and California. Its newly minted same-sex marriage license will be honored in a total of 4 states. In 1996, in an effort to appease the Republican right, President Clinton signed into law the Defense of Marriage Act, though a more accurate name would have been the Anti-Gay Marriage Act. For the first time in our nation's history, marriage was defined by Congress as a partnership between a man and a woman. There are 1,138 federal statutory provisions to grant rights, benefits, and protections to Americans once they become married. DOMA restricts these privileges to benefit the majority of the population, while legally discriminating against millions of other Americans. Taking their cue from Congress, 46 states have now enacted their own version of DOMA. And 26 states have taken the extreme measure of writing a same-sex marriage prohibition as an amendment to their Constitution. Several state courts have challenged the constitutionality of DOMA, and California is the first to overturn it.
The court said, in contrast to earlier times, our state now recognizes that an individual's capacity to establish a loving and long-term committed relationship with another person does not depend upon the individual's sexual orientation. And more generally, that an individual's sexual orientation, like a person's race or gender, does not constitute a legitimate basis upon which to deny or withhold legal rights.
Today we give marriage equality to the thousands of people in this state who have worked and struggled for this day to come. Today I couldn't be prouder to be a Californian. I couldn't be prouder of the California Supreme Court, who 60 years after deciding that you couldn't discriminate in marriage based on race, we've now, leading the way once again, say that here in California, that same-sex couples, that gay and lesbian couples can marry, that it's a fundamental right of liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Individual freedom and liberty defines us, who we are as Californians and Americans. And today that fundamental right has been extended to hundreds of thousands of gay and lesbian Californians who have been left out for far too long. In 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the freedom to marry has long been recognized as one of the vital personal rights essential to the orderly pursuit of happiness. And today, we have finally granted that fundamental right to every single Californian.
I do look at California same-sex marriage and Massachusetts same-sex marriage as progress. And in our fight to try and get same-sex immigration as a federal law, I believe that having same-sex marriage in those two states will only help our cause. So it is progress, but it's not really applicable to our situation. If we do get married here in California, it is likely to trigger an immigration problem. On the application, you have to list whether you're married. And if she lists that she is, and then it's an American woman, visa denied. Margot and I, we've been together, June will be 6 years we've been together this summer, and she has been living here legally as a student for the last 4.5 years, and her visa is going to expire on August 17th. I cannot adopt our daughter, who's now 8.5 months old, because if my name is on her birth certificate, Margot will not be able to get another visa because they are going to see a tie to an American. People apply, foreigners apply to the United States for a visa. They have to show that their intention is to go back to their country. Margot and I have been approached by some very nice gay gentlemen that have suggested, hey, well, I'll marry you, and this can all go away. While I think that's very sweet and kind, the reality is it's against the law. And there are very severe penalties for breaking the law and committing fraud. And one of which is the Patriot Act. Because Homeland Security has stepped into immigration, they can take my property if I was involved in such fraud. I would be a criminal. I would have to pay penalties, and I would have to serve up to 10 years in jail. We actually just spoke to our lawyer today about her pending visa application, and it's looking like she's not going to get a visa to allow us to continue living here. Sorry. We just found this out about 2.5 hours ago. We haven't even talked about it.
Marriage is a system, a safety net of protection and security and responsibility that governs every area of life, from birth to death, with taxes in between. And couples who cannot legally marry are deprived of the ability to pool their legal resources without adverse tax treatment. They're deprived of important protections to hold their family together, whether it be in the context of immigration or Social Security or health care or parent-child relationships. And even more important than this set of thousands of legal protections and responsibilities is that gay people who are denied the freedom to marry are denied the precious vocabulary of commitment, of love, of dedication, of self-sacrifice, of respect that everyone understands. When you say I'm married, people know immediately who you are in relationship to the primary person you're building your life with. You don't have to fumble for documents. You don't have to pull in a lawyer. You don't have to explain what something they've never heard of means. You're married. We have to talk about our stories even when they're terrible, because the people who love us, the people who care about us, the people who are capable of fairness don't know. They don't know that they see you as a couple. They treat you as a couple. They love you. They think you're a good person. They don't know how vulnerable you are, how your committed love and relationship is treated by the government as nothing. They don't know that, and it's our job to break that silence out of pain, or even just out of personal engagement around the Thanksgiving dinner table or at the softball game. We have to talk about it and give them what they need.
Here to talk about it, her name is Charlene Strong. And Charlene, first and foremost, thanks for joining us here. We really do appreciate it. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thank you for having me today.
3, 2, 1. Charlene Strong, gay activist, and currently working on the film For My Wife.
You're very influential people. You're in society. You're out there with everyone working in the business world. You have the capability of being that activist. Wouldn't it be great at the end of that wedding Hey, you got to sign a piece of paper that really said, this is my wife, this is my wife. 39 states still do not recognize any form of domestic partnership, gay marriage, anything. And what I do understand is love, and that love is amazing. And what I'm asking you tonight is I'm challenging you. I'm asking you to become an advocate for change. I do think that social justice movements have a lot in common, and generally speaking, you do need to reach out for allies, to make bridges of empathy, to be tough when you need to be. I'm not suggesting that people are all persuadable. They're not. Sometimes you have to bring lawsuits. Sometimes you have to have economic boycotts. Sometimes you have to be tough. But I would just say follow the steps that you would want to be followed with you. In other words, speak to people as you would want to be spoken to if you were being biased in some way. I think you would want someone to be honest with you and not just hate you quietly, but to tell you what you're doing in the most gentle and empathetic way possible. And if that doesn't work, then to accelerate, to try to introduce that person to others with whom they could identify, to try to explain their enlightened self-interest in it. I mean, if there is a feminist someplace who doesn't understand that this is all the same cause, then explain it to her, or him. And just follow a logical progression of steps. Don't skip immediately to the most outrageous one or the most hostile one, even though it may be tempting. But try to follow the kind of progression that you would wish to have followed with you. What would you tell me are some of the strongest things that I could do as far as being able to be effective in my voice and my ability to put the message out there that's not threatening, because I don't think people are going to be very receptive to that, but in a way that people can maybe understand a little bit more clearly? Well, I think you already have the greatest strength, which is it's coming out of experience. Somebody who's experienced something is more expert in it than the experts. And your most powerful force is your own story, and telling it in a way that people can identify with, and encouraging other people to tell their stories so that we all see what is shared in it. We probably have all experienced some stereotype or some discrimination or some denial or some feeling of being invisible. And if we can connect those feelings, then you give the person you're trying to convince the strongest motive, which is not only to help you, but to help themselves. It's really enlightened self-interest. There's so many changes that have happened to me since Kate's death. New surroundings, new friends, new environments. The world doesn't even smell the same to me anymore. And I think for me, it's just, I feel like I've just been plunked into a whole new world, and I'm left to try to figure this out. It's like, okay, here you are.
The stars shine bright at the 19th Annual GLAAD Media Awards, recognizing fair, accurate, and inclusive representations of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. From the Kodak Theater in Hollywood, California.
I thought you were going to say I'm gayer than you. Because I'm like at least 10% gayer than you are.
You're one of the most beautiful women in the world.
One of them?
know most people tonight, when I ask them who are they most excited to see, it's you. How does that make you feel?
Hey, that's sweet. That's very sweet.
Somebody saw it. Somebody back there thought I was on Entourage. I know. Boy, was he mortified. I guess we all do look alike.
Here it is. So here's the For My Wife page. It's a mixed feeling. I would think Kate would so love being here right now, and I don't know. I'm very moved by it, to be honest with you. It's like my world has changed so drastically, and I just hope that I'm doing all the right things.
Please welcome T.R. Knight.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks. I am here to introduce to you a leader in our fight. His devotion to our family and to our future and to what is right is to be commended. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of GLAAD, Neil Giuliani.
In my work as the president of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, I say many times that how our lives are portrayed in the media doesn't make a bit of difference. It makes all the difference. Media advocacy, fighting defamation, and changing hearts and minds is at the core of our mission at GLAAD. And tonight, thanks to Bravo, we have the opportunity to reach into over 84 million homes. That's Charlene Strong and Kate Fleming. Charlene and Kate were committed and loving partners for nearly a decade. In December 2006, a severe storm caused flooding where they lived in Seattle, and Kate, an acclaimed audiobook narrator, became trapped in her basement recording studio as the flood waters rose. Charlene fought to free Kate from the completely flooded studio. By the time she got her out, Kate was unconscious. When Charlene arrived at the hospital with Kate, she was told that since she was not legally Kate's spouse, she could not be in there with her without her family's permission. And as the clock ticked by, Charlene frantically dialed Kate's relatives, finally receiving permission to be with her, to be by her partner's side when she passed away that night. Charlene knew that she had to speak out. This would happen again to another loving couple. She told her story to members of the Washington State Legislature only a month after Kate's passing, and she testified at the Washington State Legislature, and just a month after that, they enacted a landmark domestic partnership law that helps gay couples take care of each other when they need each other the most. And now, GLAAD is working with Charlene to share her story with the nation and the fact that we must never settle for domestic partnerships because they will never be full equality. We are so honored that Charlene is with us here tonight. And Charlene, know that GLAAD will always stand with you. Please join me in welcoming Charlene Strong.
Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. This story is still being told. It ends with equality.
Kate was all about social justice. And for me, the fight has just begun. And I will continue to fight in Kate's name.
You showed those legislators it wasn't about a bill or a piece of paper. It was about human kindness, it was about having a heart, and it was about respecting people. There is no greater thing I think you could have done than have brought that personal message.
She went through the world with her hands open and trying to receive the...
She's with you. She's teaching you. You just said what you learned, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the nice thing about gay marriage is you have two people excited about the wedding. You know, straight marriages, you just have the one and the other one, yeah, those doilies are fine. Yeah, fine. Yeah, fine. Just, honey, just pick something. But with the gay, oh my gosh, both people are excited. And that never happens.
I'm the wrong person to ask about marriage.
What is marriage equality? Marriage equality is the right to marry who you want to marry, regardless of who you are and who you love.
You know, it feels like 40 years ago when black people couldn't marry white people. Like, what the hell are you talking about? That's ridiculous. So, let's get the show on the road already. Equality for everybody.
Marriage equality is important because I feel that no one has the right to tell anyone else what they can and cannot do in their own personal life, what they can believe, what they can feel.
I don't think marriage needs any other definition. It doesn't need any other word before it. It doesn't need any other word after it. We're all Americans. We're all equal.
I think the Supreme Court ruling in California is going to be the start of a wave towards getting this legalized all over the country, because California is a huge state. Millions of people are going to do it. Millions of people are going to come here to get married. They're going to go back to their home states with this marriage license, and they're going to say to the people in Indiana and Missouri, you must recognize our right to exist as a legal couple, and with all the rights of all the other legal couples.
Right now, I know we're a little bit behind, but I think with things like LAD and all the other works we're doing and these brilliant shows that are showing relationships and marriages, that'll really prove that love is love despite the title. So I mean, who knows, one day I'll have a husband and I'll be very happy.
Whatever anybody wants to do, they should be able to do. That's all I can say. I don't really want to get married, but I think that if people really want to, it's their right and privilege.
Well, the Reverend Sally Kirkland from the Church of the Movement of Spiritual and Awareness, I really have wanted this to happen for a long time, and I will do anything to keep it happening. And I did marry Adam to Steve in the film Adam and Steve.
You know, marriage equality is a number one priority in this country, and I also believe that same-sex parenthood is something that we need to look closely at, because there are a lot of kids out there who need families.
Okay, I've agreed to accept. I'm in this for this.
Well, what's the problem? Gas is $4 a gallon. I got bigger problems to worry about what you two are doing.